always will, but to what level is it still at? That is basically hostile and always at war. It's what causes the catalyst. The moment that, what causes the defeat of the catalyst is that every time something specific happens, like you don't feel like that they're appreciating you enough, or you don't like the way this person said that, or you're still mad about this. So the moment that little bitty, because remember, what is a catalyst? That's why I tied the two together. What is a catalyst? A catalyst is anything. It's not just something that's going to take you to the next level. That's that one-sided way of seeing things. The catalyst could also be something that totally depresses you. It's that one little small thing, though, that triggers everything. That's what a catalyst is. So, what we get a chance to see here today is that in all reality, what's been happening in these particular physical planes, what we call the hive, the hierarchy changes based on the precession of the zodiac. And because the zodiac is so tied into our emotions, it embodies these energies that we're calling our emotions. I love the way we take them then. Those are my emotions. Wait a minute, these are not just yours. They belong to everyone. I've seen pretty much everyone I've met get pissed off before. You see what I mean? So emotions are not just excluded to one person. They belong to everybody. And that's something that people don't really consider. They always think about the uniqueness of their emotional attitude, but they fail to realize that everyone possesses these same emotions in a certain trait, or excuse me, in a certain manner or degree. So when we begin to accept that, we begin to see the wheels be, like I said, let's look behind the curtain. How does it all work? It's because the emotional centers are present within all the beings. And what you have going on now is really where you have knowledge that's out there. If you understand how to interpret it, like this wheel that I'm showing you, you have knowledge that's out there that tells you everything about what's going on if you're not just looking at the goat in the top in the tetragrammaton right there. And then deciding that the chart is somewhat Baphometian and blah, blah, blah. And then that means that the knowledge and blah, blah, blah. And here you go. You can't even find the truth in it. And so if you want to know why that happens, there's this thing that's known as the scapegoat. I'll say it again. Scapegoat. What is a scapegoat? Let's think about this, because this is actually where most people have stored most of their power. In this scapegoat. Now, the ancient knowledge about the scapegoat was this, that during the times of the Talmud, that if somebody did something wrong, then they would basically have this one day of the year that everything that went wrong was put on the one animal. Then it was led off into the forest, and then it would be eaten by wild creatures, and that would be the end of whatever the people did wrong. And look, they'll argue me down about just simple principles about nature, but accept concepts like this without fully digging into what's being said. Taking in the exoteric meaning rather than the esoteric meaning. So the esoteric meaning is that, now see, when I talked earlier about the traits of humanity, when I say somebody will kill you, somebody will steal from you, somebody will be jealous of you, some people are now fully convinced that it's because of the Illuminati. They will blame another party for the behavior not only of themselves but also others. And this leaves them powerless to changing anything. If we delegate things to God and God never shows up, we remain powerless. So until we put the responsibility back on ourselves, then we will remain powerless. And so this was the secret knowledge about this goat, is that this scapegoat would eventually have power over everyone through guilt. Because once you blame someone or judge someone for something and then you actually do it, even if it's a little bit, you feel guilty for doing that. And that guilt becomes a hypocrisy, and that hypocrisy becomes the catalyst to your depression. Some people will need to play that back again, listen to that again one day, to realize what I just said to you. So you realize that if you give anything power over you and saying that it's the one affecting you without putting it into its general context, because when I talk about Nazis, when I talk about deprogramming, when I talk about Yada Bail, when I talk about all these characters, I still never neglect in the end of my circuit to eat it. Meaning to bring it as above, so below, to see it inside as outside, to see the variation of where that existed or exists inside of myself, to identify. See, because if you say, I'm not like that, then means you have not identified that inside of yourself. You don't have to be amplifying it. No, that's not what I'm saying, but you have to ping it. So that way you can say, okay, this coordinates map, it's like GPS. If we've been there before, then we know how to get back there again. We know where, then that gives us the knowledge of if someone happens to be there, where they are and how to get them out of there. You see? So there's lots of values here in us realizing what exactly are we doing here. But the scapegoat becomes the first thing to realize that's got to become weaned out completely of your way of approaching all of this. So that's how that works. And so now everyone's got the scapegoat, who's Baphomet. They blame the scapegoat for everything that's going on wrong in society. Now they've given the scapegoat so much power, they think that this being actually will terrorize any kind of person that's trying to do something that is opposite to what it wants to be doing, what they want to be doing to help the situation on this spiritual plane. So, because remember, there's levels to this. See, because today, that's what hierarchy means. It's levels. And people don't like levels. A lot of people don't like levels. That's why they're trying to get more into the spiritual planes and all this kind of stuff. And they keep saying higher and lower as if levels somehow desist at a certain point, but they don't. Physical planes always consist of levels. Why? Instead of us trying to abolish the idea of levels, let's figure out why. It's because of the strata. This is called the coil. See, because you're leaving this trail behind you. You're spinning, and then you have this cord coming out of you, kind of like a spider web. And as you're spinning, that cord spiral is still collecting and collecting, and it becomes coiled. It's holding all your experiences, all your information, because you're not going to recall all your experiences and all your information all at one moment, are you? That's actually called uncoiling. Some people have those kind of experiences where all of a sudden, blow, like everything just comes out. They call that a Kundalini awakening. This is because you're coming into complete presence. All of these different variations of you, including the scapegoat version of you, including the Asclepius, Sagittarius, Capricornic, whatever, all those sides all at one time. You see, that's what we talked about is what, the conscious person that is working on conscious reincarnation, if they want to, that's a professional reincarnator. That's what's really going on, is because, see, when you come out of the bodies, it's like, blow, all of a sudden, all of what's here is just right there it's right there coursing through you. The statement they made is saying the earth is like a dragon and its spine is in full Kundalini. And those are all the trees and all the life that you see. Imagine having that to deal with. You see what I mean? Like, how could you deal with something like that? And that's why it's always good to deal with these kind of metaphors. You want one weight on one side, let's say the dragon, you see the furious, the fire, and then another weight on another side, let's say the monk meditating, able to control the fire. But just having the monk there, you see what I mean? It's not going to give us the full circle of thought. So remember, this is where, so fear exists in those realms where you can't see. And if you can't see in there, it means that you don't have your eye open. We're omniscient. So all realms are at access unless you close your eye on that realm. So when I see all realms, I look at everything that I see and I can tell you right away, okay, this is what this means. You got, let's use for numbers here 12. Numbers are interesting because they are so full of it. They mean almost nothing. If I say there's 5, there's 6, there's 7 of them, there's 1,000 of them, the variations between the numbers that I'm talking about are really not useful if you're dealing with absolutes. Because once you know absolutes, the numbers that come after that are just parts of the program. So what I was going to say today is there's somewhat of a disclaimer. Now pause for a minute here. There's a disclaimer on today's class, and that's what I'm explaining to you now is based on what, now I just got here, these people have been doing and what they believe in. And this is why they believe in this. This is the numbers they use, and this is how it works. But I'm not saying whatsoever that this is the end all, finish all, this is the real blueprint of how it works, because there's been too much hacking. This is what somebody should do as a courtesy. Anyone that's coming to you with knowledge information, say, as a courtesy, I will disclose to you what is in these files, but I see evidence of tampering. Because of one specific thing with this kind of knowledge. If you can change it, you can basically take the place of the creators. That's what much of this knowledge, and it even does it on a literal level. Listen to what I'm saying. If you see the knowledge that exists within the world, and you change, and I'm talking about absolute principles of how the foundations of the world were even laid, you can choose to lay foundations a different way to see what the result's going to be. Some people say it never works out. I don't even know. That could just be a judgment. Maybe someone could change things and move one species of frequency to another wavelength, and then those whole thing come back into balance. I don't know. But what I'm saying is that the reason why you have different systems is because it changes certain parts of the configuration. And that's why I say when the sky in heaven, let's use this one as an example, emitting a light code, we are exposed to a certain amount of those lights. That's why they have the primary planetary systems. And because of that exposure, it kind of shapes, forms, and fashions how we act, unless we get out of that system some way or another. Those archetypical breaths affect the planetary germ, seed germ. That's why the word german means first man. Of course, they will want to name themselves that. So that seed germ is always being influenced. And what it's being influenced by until it can actually get to its graduated stage is by the ushers, or basically the shepherds, if you may, that are the different traits of the zodiac. That's why you have 12 disciples. There's 12 prophets. You get this 12, 12, 12 because, see, there's an introduction now then, or at this point, of a system that just narrows it into these numbers. And so what I'm saying is that what these numbers do and what it gets into, especially when you see that big blueprint that I showed a while ago, and man, it's going to be hard to kind of let everyone recall this particular blueprint, but we call it the program spiritual world, and it's a whole body, and it has all these different temples and these different Hebrew words and all sorts of different things going on in different parts of the body. You'll see exactly what that really means today. Because this, what you're looking at, is an actual body. This disc that I'm showing you right now is, if someone was to alchemically and symbolically put this down into a mandala, this Western program, this is the Western program mandala. I forgot one more thing. There is a disclaimer today on today's course, a second disclaimer. Excuse me, everyone. I had just went right to the notes and I skipped the main page. About the images today, some of the images I cannot actually put up, and that's why I wanted to say it now, because if after the show I don't say anything and then people keep emailing about certain images, some of the images I can't put up because they're actually part of the next semester. What I did do is I used those images because I really wanted to talk about something specific that I felt that was going to give people a good position to be in once we close down this course and begin the next one. Right, because everything leads to something else. So, but some of these images I can't source right away, so just be aware of that. So if you don't see those images, when I actually send the email though and say that the archive page is up, if you don't see those images, you have the video. So that's as much as you'll be able to have of those images. And generally, all these images, I'm going over really slow, so you should be able to really, do what you need to do as far as getting any kind of snapshots or stuff like that. But just out of courtesy of the next semester, I'm not going to source those images yet. In conclusion, again, what you're looking at here is you're seeing the westernized mandala of this current program running. Okay. And then what you're getting is you're getting the dualities, and you're getting the planetary energies, the emotions, right? Each planet has its own temperament. And this is, again, how you should see now our existence, no matter how many planets and however many. In fact, maybe we should be glad that they're saying there's only 7, because we could start there. If they told you there was 1 billion and we had to start figuring it out, man, we could be here for a long time. So just with these 7 planets, or and these 12 emotions, this is actually why these systems were come up with initially. Now remember, the systems have been tampered with, and you'll see that later on. But the whole purpose of this was, somebody said, well, look, we need to nail it down, because this is crazy. Like, if we're trying to learn too much at one time, somebody try to lay a blueprint over this, some kind of schematic, and give us more of an idea of what we're talking about being in this physical experiences. So then Socrates would probably stand up, Plato, whatever, would come up and then say, okay, here it is. So there's 12 deacons. There's basically 12 energetic forces that are on the outskirts. And then they come in through the 4 sides of the planet. And this is how the patterns are, like 12, and then there's a square. And they come in through the 4 areas, and they say, so once they come in, then they're manifesting into flesh, and then they come into the orb. So they give you a whole explanation of what, I'll simplify for you, is that the body, what you're calling the form from the subjective plane, the energetic force, comes through and gets basically bolt on, like Iron Man. All of these different traits and these different things, but in different variations as they're coming through the cosmos. And then one of the main faculties that's installed is this symmetry. And this symmetry allows them to have both poles. So if on one side they love, on the other side they'll hate. And then that will make up this being that is driven by energy of its own love and hate relationship with this experience. So that's more or less what you're looking at when you're talking about this astrology and these symbols. Now, of course, it can get really elaborate. Somebody could draw you a 72-bit system. Somebody could draw you a 12 or 22-bit system. There's different systems. So the main one that we're going to hone into today is what segment of this wheel everyone in this reality on that westernized program is supposed to be on. So we're just saying, like, the way they're pushing the programs, we're in the era of 5, 6, and stepping into 7. Soon there will be another era. It'll be 7, 8, stepping into 9. But make no mistake, there is the entire, let's say, 1 to 10 present on the reality already. It's just about what's actually being amplified and magnified. And this is what they call the yuga in a tense. It actually governs, is this one of the darker times? Is this one of the lighter times? So how does this work though? Like, cause somebody said, well, how could you govern that? Like, how could a person govern that? Like, is this a darker time or is this a lighter time? Why would this be like that? Well, one, it has a lot to do with symmetry, because if you're in a binary universe, which we are, zeros and ones, it will flip-flop from day to night. But it's easier for you, and this is why we always talk about understanding things, because when somebody starts talking about external stuff to me, I just feel like, okay, I'm trying, but internally, your ages, this is what it's called, the age or the yugas. Your age affects a lot about how you feel. And if one of you is back there like, nah, I've always been the same, check yourself out at 4 years old. I mean, there's going to be a variation from 4 years old to now. And we're not saying that variation is positive or negative. I'm still the same. That side of you, which you always will, but to what level is it still at? That is basically hostile